In 2026, 17 years after he died, a film about his life opened to a reported $97 million in a single domestic weekend and went on to cross $1 billion worldwide. He did not write it. He did not star in it. He was not there. And yet it happened because of one asset he spent his whole life building, and it was not a song. It was his name. This is the last episode in this series, and it is about the strangest asset on the list. The one that does not appear on any balance sheet, that you cannot buy on any exchange, and that almost everybody owns something of without ever realizing it is worth money. Your reputation, your name, what people think of when they hear it. And I want to be careful because this topic attracts a lot of nonsense. This is not about becoming an influencer or posting more or building a following. It is about something far older and far more useful. Being known by the right people for something specific. That is the whole idea, and it works whether you have 200 followers or none at all. So let us look at what he actually did, because it was deliberate. At a certain point, Michael was not content with being a very successful singer. Reporting from the era describes a concerted push for the title King of Pop to be used about him, in press, in broadcast, in the language around his work. It was, in effect, a positioning exercise. And whatever you think of that, look at the result. He took an ordinary description singer and replaced it with a category of one. Not the best pop singer, which invites comparison and argument. The King of Pop, which is a position rather than a ranking. Once a title like that sticks, it stops being an opinion and becomes a label people use without thinking. Then he did the thing most people never do. He treated that name as property. Names, likenesses, signature images, and phrases can be registered, licensed, and controlled, which means the value does not just sit in the air as goodwill. It becomes something that can be contracted, sold, and inherited, exactly like the catalog we talked about in episode 1. And here is the proof that it worked. After his death, his estate has been able to license that identity again and again. A touring show built around his music. A stage musical about his life that has reportedly taken hundreds of millions across its productions. And in 2026, a major film co-financed by the estate itself, which crossed $1 billion globally. Verify these figures. Notice something important about that list. Not one of those is a record. The catalog, the songs, the recordings, that was episode 1's asset. This is a completely separate income stream built on top of who he was. Same person, two entirely different assets, each capable of paying independently of the other. And that is the part I want you to take seriously, because it is the difference between a good financial life and a resilient one. He did not have one income. He had performance income, publishing income, recording income, licensing income, and brand income. When one of those struggled, the others carried on. Concentration is what makes people fragile. Now I'm going to be honest with you about the other edge of this, because I would be doing you a disservice otherwise. A reputation is an asset whose value is set by other people. Michael's public legacy has been intensely contested for decades, and I am not going to litigate any of that here. But the financial lesson is unavoidable. What the public gives, the public can revise. An asset built on perception carries a risk that a bond or a building simply does not. So hold both things at once. Reputation can be extraordinarily valuable, and it is uniquely fragile, which means it is worth building deliberately and worth protecting carefully. That combination, valuable and fragile, is exactly why most people should build it slowly and honestly rather than loudly. So what does this actually mean for someone who is not famous and has no intention of being? Let me define the asset properly, because the word brand has been ruined by marketing people. Your professional reputation is simply this: the number of people who would recommend you without being asked, multiplied by how specific that recommendation is. And specificity is the whole game. Being known as someone who is good at their job is worth very little because everyone claims it. Being known as the person who sorts out messy accounts before a deadline or who can fix that one machine nobody else understands is worth a great deal. Vague reputations do not travel. Specific ones get passed around. And this asset behaves remarkably like the investments we discussed in episode 1. It compounds. Every good piece of work adds to it. Every person who has a good experience with you tells someone else. It builds slowly and invisibly for years, and then at some point opportunities start arriving without you looking for them. That is the curve bending upward. It also has a property no other asset has. It cannot be repossessed. Markets can fall, businesses can fail, property can be lost, and we have spent an entire episode on how debt can take things away from you. But nobody can seize what people think of you. It is the only asset that survives a total financial reset intact, and it is what lets people rebuild. And it quietly determines your income more than almost anything else. Reputation is why one person gets called first for the good work and another applies for it. It is why one gets a referral and another gets a rejection. Two people with identical skills can earn wildly different amounts purely because of who thinks of them and when. Now let us talk about the second half of this episode, which is diversification of income, because reputation is what makes it possible. And the data here is genuinely surprising. In the United States, official labor statistics show that only around 5% of employed people hold more than one job. Verify the current figure, which means roughly 19 in 20 households depend on a single source of money. Think about that as a portfolio. If someone told you they had put 100% of their investments into a single company, you would call that reckless. And yet almost everyone does exactly that with their income, which is the thing that funds the entire rest of their financial life. One employer, one decision maker, one bad quarter away from zero. And the idea that a job is permanent does not survive contact with the data. Official statistics on employee tenure show that the typical worker has been with their current employer for only a handful of years, and for younger workers it is shorter still. Look up the current figure. The job you think of as your foundation is, statistically, a temporary arrangement that simply has not ended yet, and it is not rare for jobs to end. Government labor data tracks how many people leave or lose a job every single month, and the numbers run into the millions, even in a healthy economy with low unemployment. Verify the current figures. This is not a recession statistic. This is simply how the labor market works all the time, quietly in the background. And the reason people do it is not stupidity. It is that a job feels like the safe option and a second income stream feels like the risky one. But look at the actual structure. One source is concentration. Several sources is diversification. We would never confuse those two in an investment conversation, and it is exactly the same mathematics. And plenty of people are already doing something about it, quietly. Federal Reserve research on household finances tracks how many adults earn money outside their main job, through informal or occasional work, and the share is considerably higher than the official second job figure. Verify the current number. It suggests the real gap is not willingness. It is that most of that work stays small and unstructured. Michael's structure, stripped of all the glamour, was simply several income streams built on one reputation. And that is a template that scales all the way down. You are not building an empire. You are trying to make sure that if one source of income stops, your life does not. So here is how you actually build this, and I want to be practical rather than inspirational. 7 steps, and the first 4 cost nothing but attention. 1. Pick the specific thing, not your job title, the thing you want to be called about. It should sit where what you are good at, what people actually need, and what you can stand doing for years all overlap. Write it as a single sentence. If you cannot say it in one sentence, nobody else will be able to repeat it, and repetition is how reputations travel. 2. Get visibly good at it and let the work be seen. This is the part people skip because it feels like showing off. It is not. Sharing what you learn, writing up how you solve something, showing your work in public, that is simply making your competence findable. Invisible excellence pays nothing. The world cannot recommend what it has never seen. 3. Be genuinely useful to people with nothing attached. Answer the question, make the introduction, share the resource. Reputation is built almost entirely out of other people's memories of being helped by you. This is not a tactic, and it stops working the moment you treat it as one, but it is the single most reliable way this asset grows. 4. Own the way people reach you. This one matters more than it sounds. If your entire professional presence lives on one platform, you are a tenant, and the landlord can change the rules or disappear overnight. A simple site you control and a direct way to contact people who care about your work is the difference between owning the asset and renting it. 5. Now turn that reputation into a second income stream and start absurdly small. 1 client, 1 evening a week, 1 small project. The goal at the beginning is not money, it is proof that money can arrive from a second direction. That first payment from a source that is not your employer changes how you see your entire financial life. And a word on what to charge, because this is where most people undersell themselves badly. Do not price your time by what feels comfortable to ask. Price it against what the outcome is worth to the person paying, and against what it would cost them to solve it another way. Then raise it once you have proof it works. Charging too little is not humility, it is a signal, and people read it as one. And be realistic about the odds, because I do not want to sell you a fantasy. Official data on new businesses shows that a meaningful share do not survive their first 5 years. Verify the current figures. That is not a reason to avoid starting. It is a reason to start small, keep your costs near zero, and stay employed while you find out whether the thing works. And notice how much of this depends on people you barely know. The opportunities that change careers rarely come from close friends who mostly know the same things and the same people you do. They come from the wider circle. The former colleague, the person you helped once, the acquaintance who remembers what you do, which is precisely why being specific and being useful matter so much. 6. Understand the 3 types of income because they are not equal. There is time for money where you are paid for hours. There is product where you make something once and it sells repeatedly. And there is ownership where assets pay you without your involvement at all, which is where episode 1 came in. Most people only ever have the first. The goal over years is to move along that line. 7. Root the second income somewhere deliberate. This is where this whole series closes the loop. Extra income that lands in your current account simply raises your lifestyle, which is exactly the trap from episode 2. Send it into ownership instead. A second stream funding assets is how ordinary people build serious wealth on unremarkable incomes. Now the objections, and the first is the loudest. I do not have time. I understand, and if you are working long hours with young children, that is completely legitimate and this may not be your season. But notice that the first 4 steps take almost no time at all. Being specific, being visible, being useful, and being reachable are things you do inside work you are already doing. The second objection is that self-promotion feels uncomfortable. Good. Honestly, that instinct will protect you. The version of this that works is not promotion, it is documentation. You are not announcing how good you are showing what you did and what you learned. Nobody dislikes that, and it accomplishes the same thing far more durably. The third objection is that a second income might jeopardize the first. That is a real concern, and it deserves a real answer. Check your employment contract. Avoid anything that competes with your employer, keep it entirely separate from work time and work equipment, and be sensible about visibility. Do this properly and quietly rather than quickly. The fourth objection is that you might fail publicly. You might. And here is the thing almost nobody tells you. Reputations survive visible failure far better than they survive invisibility. People remember how you handled a problem far longer than they remember that you had one. What genuinely damages this asset is not failure. It is dishonesty. Which brings me to the most important protective rule. Do not borrow against your reputation by overpromising. Every deadline you miss, every claim you cannot back up, every corner you quietly cut is a withdrawal from an account you spent years filling. And unlike money, this account can go negative in a single afternoon and take years to recover. And do not underestimate the ordinary version of this. Most people will never license a name or sign a brand deal. But being the person who is reliably called first, who gets the referral, who is offered the role before it is advertised, is worth an enormous amount of money over a working life. That is the same asset. It is just spending itself quietly. And do not overlook the audience you already have. Your employer is a customer, your colleagues are a network, and the reputation you build inside a company is the fastest paying version of this asset. The person everyone trusts internally gets the interesting projects, the flexibility, and the pay rises. You do not have to go outside to start. You have to be specific where you already are, and give this a defined runway rather than an open-ended hope. Pick 12 months. Decide what you will do consistently in that time, and decide in advance what would count as it working. A few clients, a certain amount earned, a certain number of people who now know what you do. Without a finish line, you will either quit at month 3 or drift for a decade. One more practical note. Write things down as you go. A simple running record of what you worked on, what problems you solved, what results followed. Not for anyone else, for you. When an opportunity appears and you have 4 days to make a case for yourself, that record is the difference between a strong answer and a vague one. And finally, be patient with this in a way you would not need to be with a savings account. Reputation compounds on a longer time scale than money does. 2 years in, it can feel like nothing is happening. 5 years in, it starts to look like luck to everyone watching. It is not luck. It is a slow asset finally becoming visible. So let us close the loop on Michael. In 2026, a film about his life became one of the biggest biographical films ever made, with his estate as a co-financier and his likeness at the center of it. Verify the figures because box office numbers move, but the fact stands. Decades after the last record, the name was still generating income, and think about what that actually proves. The songs were an asset, the publishing was an asset. But the thing that made a film possible, and a musical and a touring show, was that millions of people had a specific, immediate reaction to a name. That reaction was built over a lifetime, and then it kept working long after the lifetime ended. So here is the whole series in 5 sentences, and I would genuinely like you to remember this. Own things that pay you. Protect the gap between what you earn and what you spend, because that gap is the only thing that can buy them. Be extremely careful what you borrow against them. Structure them so they survive without you. And build a name that opens doors, because that is the asset that generates all the others. And notice what none of that required. It did not require fame. It did not require an enormous income. It did not require being early to something, or lucky, or exceptional. Every single one of those 5 is available to a person on an ordinary salary who decides to be deliberate about it for a decade. The tragedy of Michael Jackson's finances is not that he did not know these things. He knew them better than almost anyone. He bought the catalog. He built the name. He created multiple streams. What went wrong was the spending and the borrowing wrapped around them, which should tell you that the offense and the defense matter equally, and most people only ever learn one. So here is your one step this week, and it is the smallest one in the series. Write one sentence describing the specific thing you want to be known for. Then send it to one person who could actually use it and offer to help with something. That is it. That is how this asset starts, and it costs nothing but a little discomfort. Thank you for staying with this whole series. If it changed how you think about money, the next case study is already being built, and I would love to see you there.